Good afternoon once again. I'm happy to welcome you at this panel. We have very good title today. Gender equality and the EU. We have three speakers because Alexandra Egert from the Laboratory of Legislative Initiatives yesterday fell ill with the flu, and I myself, I also have a cough, but still we have like Maxim Yak, advocacy manager from NGO Point of Balance, Yana Nestarovich, deputy head on the Department of Equal Rights and Prevention of Discrimination, Ombudsman under the Parliament of Ukraine. Anastasia Da, Chief Advocacy Manager from the Human Rights Center, Zmina. Have you heard about have you heard about the report on gender equality? This is a report which has been drafted at the level of the government. As far as these are actually two reports. Here on the table, you see the report from previous year, and we will discuss this year report, this year annual report, which is twice as big as that. We will ask Anastasia to tell us what does it mean, the shadow report on gender equality, and what does it mean. Thank you for this opportunity. I will provide you about this report. This is a report which all the countries who are the candidate countries have to provide to the EU. This is about the country's progress on its way to the EU. This was the second time when this report was produced in Ukraine. The first one, was produced last year, and this was the second was produced. The idea of this gender equality, gender and equality report is to focus on the progress and the problem issues in the area of gender and equality. Who is responsible for production of this shadow report? This is Laboratory of Legislative Initiatives. This is an association of the lawyers of Ukraine, Europe without boundaries, and Human Rights Centers, Mina, and a couple of others. As my colleague correctly said, as Irina correctly said, this is report twice as big as it was last year. Because last year it was focused on like cluster 26 3, it was about judicial and fundamental rights, while this year we have added section number 24 about court system, about gender equality. Actually, we have big block about non-discrimination, the rights of LGBTIQ community. This is actually part of the fundamental human rights. And this area falls within the scope of the National Ombudsman, but it also covers the rights of minorities, the property rights, shelter seekers, illegal trafficking, etc. How many pages did Zmina contribute to that report? In section as to chapter 23, this were around 30, and as to section 24, it was around 40. In total, the report contains 500 recommendations how to improve the institutions' work, and how to amend the legislation, and also recommendations what the laws should be not only amended, but which laws should be passed. Is my understanding correct that this shadow report, this is not the total criticism of the authorities, this is just a recommendation or a set of recommendations which has to advise to the government what is needed for better compliance with the EU acquis. Actually, the government and all the governmental institutions, they have respect to this document despite some minor disagreements with our recommendations, but still we can contribute much to drafting of new legislative initiatives. We all understand that accession to the EU, this is our overall goal, and we share this goal. I mean that the government shares it, NGOs share it, and we all understand that these things are important for the accession. Alej, you contributed to the section which was about gender and equality. How did you how you found yourself involved into producing this report? Good afternoon. So I found myself in this team. I was invited by the Human Rights Center Zmina. They wanted to involve experts on human rights. And since by that moment, I had some experience as a human rights advisor to the parliament, and I was experienced in that provisions, and experienced in legislation provisions about gender and equality. Thus, I was invited to join the team. Now, coming back to the question that you asked to Anastasia, whether it is a criticism of authorities, but what it is. This is not a criticism. In course of the report preparation, we communicated with many experts, including those who work for the government. Our objective was to make a review of Ukrainian legislation. Our role was not to criticize the government, but to assess pragmatically what is done and what should be done. What could you review in more detail your recommendations? And I would like to say that my colleague and I, we first of all capitalized on the report which was produced last year. We took it as a starting point, as a reference point, comparing achievements of this year against the previous one. I had invited 5 experts from different areas, from the Verkhovna Rada, from the government, from the civil society, and among our findings, we have some positive improvements and some shortcomings. When we speak about positive changes, about improvements, we clearly see that within a year we had witnessed several events. First of all, appointment of gender advisor to the armed forces of Ukraine, and the increase in female actors, female people in leading positions in the army, and then several cases of sexual harassment in the army, which were adequately tackled, adequately responded. Then a very positive change was increase of female officials among top government officials, but the level of managerial staff in the departments, in governmental departments, it fluctuates between 20 and 35% correspondently. What is also very noticeable, media does not cover the role of women in society is obviously lesser if to compare against the involvement of men. As to implementation of the Istanbul Convention, the appropriate legislation was passed by the parliament, but unfortunately, some and even many provisions of the Istanbul Connection are not implemented. Actually, to implement the convention, you have not only approve it at the governmental and parliamentary level, but you have to develop secondary and national legislation. What other positive changes? We have launched a tool of intermediary reparations for the victims of sexual violence. These are reparations paid to the survivors of sexual violence from aggressive aggressor army, aggressor soldiers, etc. Now we come to ЛГБТІК. I think this will be of particular interest to you. We had written in the report that in Ukraine, we lack legislation on the hatred-based violence and violence based on SOGI indicators. In our report, we did not include the fact that a draft law 13597 was entered to the parliament about this sexual-based violence, and that will require proactive work of the parliament. And also we emphasize that the law on civil partnerships has been stagnating in the parliament. There is a lack of political will, and some year ago, we had a discussion about registered partnerships where you was the main speaker. Did we see any positive changes? We have passed roadmaps on the rule of law. This roadmap requires Ukraine to undertake some important measures to finalize the negotiations on Chapter 23. I was a member of one of the working groups that worked with the government, and I did my best to include registered partnerships, registered LGBT partnerships, and to include the hatred-based crimes into this roadmap. Without fulfilling the roadmap, Ukraine won't be able to close Chapter 23 negotiations, and this will be a very bad result. So without this law on partnerships, we won't be able to finalize our Chapter 23 negotiation. That's true. That's right. So this report is responsible for Ukraine's negotiations. Yes, we have to close all the chapters with the European Commission. Then the European Commission will inform the EU about closure of all the chapters, and eventually Ukraine will be allowed to start final procedure. Cooperation with the governmental bodies. Whether you cooperated with the governmental bodies in course of the report preparation. In particular, I mean cooperation with the Ombudsman's office. Of course, we cooperated with the government officials. I spoke to the members of parliament. I spoke to the government officials to understand their vision. We had no cooperation with the Ombudsman office. The reason was that functioning of democratic institution is part of different of another chapter, the negotiations. That's why I should not cover the chapter in my report, but actually all the information from our report could be used by the Ombudsman's office when developing their communication with government or parliamentary officials. whether you cooperated with the Ombudsman's office. Perhaps Oleg has more insights, but actually the shadow report, this is not just vision from civilian society. It is based on interviews with government and parliamentary officials, but in order to present their positions. Okay, today we have a guest from the Ombudsman office. Let us ask questions at the end. Of course, we will dedicate some time for Q&A session. Yana, what is the attitude of the Ombudsman's office to this shadow report? Whether you feel yourself offended with this report, whether you take it into consideration. Dear participants of the conference, dear colleagues, I'm happy to join this important event. And at this panel, we have been discussing not only some statistic figures, but we are discussing strategic vision, because the state is ready to ensure the rights of all people. The task of the Ombudsman office is to interact with the government bodies and to interact and involve with the experts and involve the experts. For us, the shadow report is an instrument which shows the problems, the threats. It actually indicates the route. And last year, we took into consideration the previous report. This year, we will take into consideration this new report, this fresh report. Actually, we started even implementation of some recommendations.
European standard for equality, and the mission is to arrange for interplay of governmental bodies, NGOs, and NGOs for collection of data for the hate crimes, documentation, or documenting them, and just liability for such crimes, and how effective it is done currently. This is exchange of data among governmental bodies for the effective mechanism of exchange for the collected data. And this is not just requirements of FRA. What is FRA? This is the Fundamental Rights Agency of the EU, and this draft is to incorporate and take into account the framework decision 2008 on combating certain manifestations of racism and xenophobia with criminal law. And implementation of this project is focused on one of the activities for the roadmap for the rule of law area. And this is a mechanism of cooperation. And this is reflected in the experts council on non-discrimination and equal rights, attended by experts from different NGOs and different walks of life, because discrimination framework is quite broad, encompassing all the vulnerable categories. And at this panel, I can see our experts who belong on the board or on the council as experts. The office is open for cooperation. They are my witnesses. And for next year, Let me say that we are ready to join and communicate for the shadow report to be comprehensive in its picturing of the state of play with the human rights. And what is the situation with the European integration? Where do you see your proper place? Ombudsman's office is directly engaged in the negotiation process. Our representatives are on the negotiating teams under Cluster 23 and 24 and 19. 23 is the rule of law, 24 is national institutions. Correct me if I'm wrong. For the 19th, it's about economic matters. Well, we have been directly involved since the opening of the process. We drafted the roadmaps, we developed tasks for them, starting, under Cluster 23 and 310, and this is non-discrimination and discrimination of LGBTQ+, protection of women against violence and gender equity. Well, we are the implementing partner under certain items, and sometimes we act as the principal implementer for awareness of the public on non-discrimination. Sometimes we are teamed up with other implementing partners, and this means that we are not outside onlookers. We are actors and agents of this Euro integration track. Euro integration accession to the EU will change your institution without any doubt, because first of all, requirements of the European Commission proclaim that the Ombudsman's office in Ukraine has a broad mandate. It's about equity, equality, and the European Commission stress on our institution being independent with a broader scope for liability for discrimination or discriminatory and hate crimes. Mostly it's about non-discrimination practices that have to be rooted in our reality. So developments and legislative changes that we have, and independent or single drafts going through the pipeline of the parliament, extending and expanding our mandate within discriminatory manifestations, that will increase our independence. At the end of the day, improve the performance. So LGBTQ plus, are there any complaints? Do you have any grievance processing mechanism and advocacy for the drafts, hate crimes, and a registered partnership, the most sensitive topics for this kind of audience? Thank you for the question. Well, let me say that working with the SOGI topics, protection of LGBTQ plus community rights, this is a kind of campaign, but also it's part and parcel it's an integral part of our parliamentary oversight function. The rights and liberties guaranteed by the Constitution are involved, and also we have certain areas, principle. Let me name just three. First of all, review of petitions. Any person can petition the office when they feel that their rights and liberties are violated, or undermined. This year, as of today, we have received 44 petitions under freedom from discrimination, gender identity, sexual orientation related. And we also collect the hate speech petitions, 15 this year. And let me say that through the same period of 2024, we received 20 and 7 respectively. So it's on the rise, basically. This is the trend. They are topical. We have to work with this. And this increase has several aspects in terms of numbers. Quantity versus quality. This is happening. This is going on, ongoing. And people have more trust in the institution. It's an increase of legal awareness, legal culture. People know where to go, which agent to or agency to approach. We are the most popular, I think, destination. In that respect, so people should be urged. We are there to urge the bodies which are official responsible for such irregularities. We have approaches from petitions from the people, and we also monitor the mass media with the reports of different violations and breaches. We've registered 11 such cases this year, and that's where we respond. Unfortunately, as we mentioned earlier, the ombudsperson cannot make people or organizations liable for that matter. We have to interplay with law enforcement, police, prosecutors' offices, a National Board on Radio and Broadcasting, State Service for Labor, Consumers' Rights, and so forth, depending on the actual area. And this is done this way, there's no other. Well, lawmakers have not provided us with any other. We cannot motion anything in the parliament. We are not empowered for that. So we can just hope for the fast track changes. Now, speaking of the numbers 44, 15, 11, every single case, every single petition is carefully considered. We respond, not referring just to one body. We try to knock at every possible door and urge all the bodies to respond, to react. And 40% of efficiency, taken into account a relatively low number of statistics, 40%, I think, is too little. 50 plus 1, well, may be considered as a positive trend. Are there any people in this audience who petitioned? Would you like to explain? Well, let me, maybe you would let me conclude. Maybe we can have this reaction, then discuss advocacy for legislative drafts. This is an issue, and this person. What's your name and what was the point? I'm Konstantin. It was 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember exactly. When the invasion started. Yeah, it was after the beginning, the onset of this invasion. I went to cinema house. There was a performance, 2 or 3 hours of jolting. I say people were laughing. I was overwhelmed, and I went out of that overcharged, and I filed this letter, this petition. Alexander Tkachenko, then Minister of Culture, and he was dismissed a month later. It's a coincidence, I suppose, but a lucky one, in my view. Well, and I demanded apology. You didn't like the performance. Well, that was homophobia as a normalcy that presented they presented homosexual people. Men do not dance. It was. Well, I still remember the name of this thing. It's with homophobic ideas being promoted, right? And I filed that letter, and there was no feedback as far as I'm concerned, and that was done. That was presented as normalcy, and no heed taken of my approach. This is one thing, and secondly, I applied to 3 organizations for promotion of change. I invested my time and effort. I was interviewed. One organization just turned me down, saying that the government had no toolkit punishing or responding in any way, and 2 other that was happening 2 years ago, then a year later. They would, like the LGBTQ conference, it was once a year, something in the media, I would mention this story, another interview, and no response. So, Yana, do you remember this case, and what's the destiny of it? Have you worked with this case, and how the Ombudsman's office can respond to this, Ombudsperson's office, for that matter? Because this is something similarly easy to change. From the top of my head, I cannot discuss this case. Back in 2024, we had 20 petitions, and in 2023, even less, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, right? No, it's the same period as of now. We have still a month for this period of registration, let's say. And let's respect the speaker's rights. In this situation, a similar situation that was about this unfortunate series to not to be late, by 30 or something, 1+1. You remember this series? I'm not sure about the name, but it was to be there by 30 or so. It was sexist, actually. And we reflected, we responded, we approached the National TV and Radio Broadcasting Board, the Ministry of Culture, and all the bodies, and we got official answer. That official answer that they doctored the script. They suspended the broadcast and to relaunch it with the doctored or redoctored script. So it would be just logical in your case. Let's not be specific. I am not prepared to discuss this particular case, not knowing the details, but drawing this analogy, I would like to say that you have to apply to the supervising bodies. And we have to take into account that this is art, and there's this fine line. I understand your concern. I share your concern. We're talking regulations here, and there's no mechanism that influences the situation. In terms of time, we have no positive dynamics. We have no positive case of few, too few, when people petition for their rights. And we can see that this is a violation. This should not be tolerated, and there should be some administrative liability, if not criminal, because criminal qualification, well, takes more to accomplish. So you can respond, and there are such things you can apply. It's painful when people say, I petitioned, they registered my petition, and there was there was no feedback. Well, I would like to speak for my term. I represent the institution, our policy, internal audit we have. It cannot happen that we just registered as incoming. There should be some final response. So we have taken measures, we explained, but the body in question answered us and refusing to respond. We have no powers to make that body liable for discrimination. We cannot make them do what we want them to do, even if we are certain about it. We can explain, interpret, specify our recommendations that this is a form of discrimination and you have such and such powers, and you as a body, as a responsible body, can do that and impose some control and take such and such measures. And let me give you another example. We were petitioned by a citizen. That was a job vacancy with discrimination, and there were some limitations with the sexual orientation mentioned. It had nothing to do with the job description, the essence, no essential things. It had nothing to do with qualifications. So we approached the consumer service agency. They are responsible currently for this state control in advertising, state oversight. They checked and the advertiser and the employer were fined for this as a punishment. Eugene, it cannot wait till the end. Can it wait? Would you like to respond? There's no input for the interpreters. We will have the Q&A part. I would like to compliment Yana's answer. We had in 2023 the law on media adopted, and it discusses arts and theatrical productions, among other things, prohibition of certain things in theater and filmmaking. But it's not demonstration, but the negative representations. For some period, homophobia was a norm, and it is all right if it's a matter of history and historical accuracy. The law on media has some changes as amended. Well, when they were drafting it, they had changes to a score or a couple of scores of other statutes, publishing, advertising, among them, filmmaking. So there were changes to a whole set of laws. And accordingly, they had that there, but you have to be very careful. We have to be. This is about responsibility and liability. It should be promoted, but I refer to the correct oversight bodies. I don't think that Ombudsman's office. There's this board for filmmaking, and we have to consult the law and see the right body to approach, let's say.
І до адвокації.
About advocacy, do you, Eugene, you're impatient to put a question. There's no input, and we cannot get Eugene's reaction. Well, it's the same. It's for Yana, right? Evgen Lesnoy, director of documentaries, journalist, a creative person. And I listened to you, and I think that 20 petitions, 22 petitions, this is nothing, next to nothing. I have this question, just how fruitful your cooperation is with the national media, inclusive the news marathon, because I approached Lubinets on several occasions, Mr. Lubinets. So this is for the channels participating in the marathon. For the LGBTQ plus topic, as far as I remember, this subject matter for the national news marathon is actually disregarded and omitted. Well, you should initiate this. And in that case, had we done that, we would have had more petitions. This is an advice and a question and the same message. We understand that the window of opportunity for the parliament is closed, and the drafts that are now renumbered and renamed are stuck in the pipeline without any prospect of adoption. There's neither political will, it's not an agency, and there's no political will coming from the presidential office. So here's my question for you and for everyone. Should we in parallel prepare a track for some situations to be changed through Cabinet of Ministers resolutions, recognition of marriages registered abroad? I am married to my husband abroad, Zoran and Timur, and other couples. This can be done through the government, and the government is more progressive than the parliament at this point. I don't know whether it's fortunate or unfortunate. Oleg is a lawyer and assistant to MP and professional in such matters, Yana. Well, the first part of this question, or your reflection, as you put it. I do not know how often you see Mr. Lubinets appearing on the media, but the most popular opportunity for him to participate in the marathon and other things. We have to understand the context of present day. It's all about full-scale invasion. Now, about people approaching us. No matter where we find ourselves, no matter what the venue is, everyone can approach us regardless. It can be a person with disability, LGBTQ plus, or whatever. There's no input. We do not hear Eugene's intervention this time. Well, as a person having to do sometime from time to time with speech writing, and I do the text on behalf of our department. Let me say that this is always covered when our ombudsperson speaks about equality, and this is part of our scope, our department, and protection of LGBTQ plus is one of the strategic items, and Mr. Lubinets never forgets to mention that. It's done publicly for the international audiences also, and this is done and said in the information space. Perhaps you haven't heard or seen that. Let me say that this is about our availability has been there for you, but NGOs like Zmina, when they say what the right correspondence should be, other NGOs protecting LGBTQ plus people. And I think the problem here is what we had about the previous case, even the 44 petitions, or the 44, 15 hate speech, 11 the initiatives, only 40%, as I mentioned earlier, can speak for some positive development.
When we discuss this 40%, when we speak about them, mainly these were the police reports about investigations in line with Article 241, and we should take into consideration how many the investigated cases will be filed to court eventually, and this will be a lesser percentage of that. And even that article that you mentioned as a big success, even it is poorly persecuted in court. We do not have sufficient court practice about that. I do not think this is the problem of the Ombudsman office, that not so many people applied or reported the breaches, the violations, because some people might not refer that cases to the Ombudsman. Well, yeah, it's not obligatory for a person to refer some cases to the Ombudsman office. The issue is that any person is aware of his or her rights and then may decide whether to refer the case to the Ombudsman office or not. As to the Ombudsman, I work with media quite often, and I can tell you that media in general are very open to the LGBTIQ people. Starlight media, Suspilne TV media, they are very open to LGBTIQ. They are represented in the United Marathon, and they make good coverage of LGBT community issues, and in particular they cover very much, they cover quite broadly the registered partnerships draft law. A week ago, it was the conference, Balance Point UA, and there were a lot of LGBT organizations and media were invited and covered the activities. So you have to cooperate with media. You have to invite them. You should offer your expertise to them. And in this case, they will be able to provide adequate coverage. As to the recognition of marriages concluded abroad, that is not possible as of Now, you should involve not only the parliament, but you should involve also the International Commission on Legislation. And but actually, we recognize the weddings which were included in the United States. Zarian today mentioned that their marriage, it is recognized, that marriage was concluded in the USA, and Ukraine recognizes it as a marriage, but it does not provide them with equal rights, and this is the difference. I've been dealing with this issue for several years. Svetoslav has been dealing with this issue for several years, but we can not do it just now. We need to have voting in the Verkhovna Rada. Uh, Now, about advocacy, whether the Ombudsman's office advocate for the draft law on partnerships and the draft law on hate crimes. Yes, the answer is yes, but here I would make a comment. Each year in the annual report, we provide our own recommendations, and we do our best to implement these recommendations, not to leave them on paper. You mean official recommendations to the Parliament of Ukraine, to Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine? And when there was a previous draft law 5488, we back in 2021, we recommended to speed up the passage of the registered draft law on official partnerships. Now, we are happy that 5488 draft law, which was revoked in new one, number 13597 draft law was registered, and now the parliamentary committee, which is responsible for this draft law, they have registered it, and they have taken it for scrutiny. There are two alternative draft laws, and we had some recommendations as to those draft law. We are not subjects of legislative initiatives. We can only contribute to advocacy, and as of now, no recommendations of the Ombudsman are mandatory for fulfillment by the Parliament. But despite of that provision, there are 2 years in a row an ombudsman presents her report at the plenary session of the Verkhovna Rada, and this is preceded by a report of the Ombudsman at the committee sessions, and eventually the plenary room of the Verkhovna Rada passes the recommendations, and then this assures us that recommendations should be implemented further on. But there are some there is something nice here. The ombudsman also can provide recommendations to the government. And those recommendations which are submitted to the government, they could be implemented more quickly, while the parliament, sometimes they cause delays in implementation of our recommendations. So to speed up the process, we involve our international partners into advocating some draft laws in the parliament. We emphasize recommendations of the Euro Commission. We emphasize and point out to the EU accession roadmaps. Actually, our roadmaps, they are designed for August 2026. So this means that the draft law 13597 should be passed by August 2026. Actually, the road maps are designed by 2026 as the latest. And today we work on the new roadmaps with the view of enlargement and with the view of the EU enlargement. And again, the overall deadline will be August 2026. Anastasia. That is, in 2026, we should, for 2026, we should plan our marriages.
Перехідні положення треба подивитися 13597.
But there will be transition provisions, draft law 12 to 12.5.252. It is also delayed, and the deadline was extended the deadline for all the roadmaps was extended because of the Hungary boycott of voting, and now EU envoy on Euro integration Taras Kachka informed us that those draft laws which we have just mentioned, they should be passed and included into the roadmaps. Anastasia, recently we met at the government discussion dedicated to 13597 draft law. I wanted to discuss the role of committees in the parliament. I agree with you that it is not that easy to get access to the parliamentary committees, but we have a very good committee on the European integration in the parliament, and it supervises the passage of many laws which are required for the access to the EU. And this committee is a bit more open to our visits because we can get access to its sessions. Now about draft law number 13597. Well, it's a good sign that the draft law is included into the list of parliamentary votings, but the draft law itself, it has some omissions in terms of provisions that are required to comply with the European standards. That is, now we want this draft law to be passed in first reading and then work on it further to develop it and upgrade it up to the necessary level before the second reading. Unless you have the draft laws on human rights are passed in the parliament, they won't work. But before being passed by the parliament, all those draft laws should be updated, upgraded. You may go to our website and check our professional review of on the content of this draft law and to see our recommendations, what provisions should be amended or changed in order to Ukraine to comply with European legislation. Well, now it's time to start Q&A session. I have to reflect on what you have just said. When we met with the ombudsman in May in media. It's a bit late now, it's November. As to the Star Media, they are only one media. For some time, I had been a contributor to the United Marathon. I know how it works. So my opinion is as follows. In order to see some progress, the members of parliament should feel pressure of their voters, but voters could make pressure only in the case that proper public opinion is created. We should not exist in our own bubble and keep saying that we are very happy with the changes. The changes happen and be fully satisfied with it. We should recognize that we lost the information battle. I mean that we have to recognize who has to write down to the members of parliament. I mean that should be members of small towns and villages, residents of small towns and villages, and they should be aware of all the problems of LGBT community. They should be offered some topics, and mass media should raise many topics. We should go to the aggressive environment of mass media and explain to them. It's easy to explain something to friendly mass media. We should explain our position in the non-friendly mass media. When the law on the registered partnerships was entered to the parliament, I cannot recollect any mass media that expressed aggressive vision. What I mentioned, that we do not have our registered roads maps. We do not raise the issue of registered partnerships now, because if we do this, then our obligations will disappear. Unfortunately, we do not hear what the gentleman without the mic says. I do not think that government representatives should discuss the personal lives of ordinary people. This is the question to ordinary people. I'd seen Yulia Melnichuk from the Council of Europe. Do you hear me? Thank you for this opportunity. Here, I would like to comment on both sides. On the one hand, I understand that civil society has to advocate and shout out the need to pass some law. On the second hand, we have advocacy, and advocacy should be built up in line with some criteria. If we have some moments which may hinder passage of any draft law, then authors of the law try to build up a strategy and to speed up passage of the law. As far as I understand, with civil partnerships, with registered partnerships, the strategy is to keep silence by some specific moment when this becomes compulsory in line with the EU accession roadmaps, while with the SOGI, it should be manifested and promoted, like ECRI recommendations are not included. The legislation could not be perfect. It has to be improved with time, but civil society may contribute to better version of the law. And this work of civil society should represent the coordinated point of view, but not try to create a negative in the public sphere. During the war, all people are concerned about the situation, and for the military, registered partnerships are very important. Please do not forget, we have many LGBTIQ community members among the servicemen among our military, and for them it is this law is very important. But in the constitution of Ukraine, it still says that marriage is union between a man and a woman, and you cannot change that within 1-2 months. This would be changed only after the war. That's why you should be realistic and you should make it step by step. The shadow report allows you to make these small steps. You may say the parliament is not right in this or that step, or the government is not right when it says this or that. We read different reports. We read a report from the government and read a report from you. And we see, thus we get a vision from both sides. And if you want to highlight these two draft laws, we will try to support them on our side. I'm very grateful to all of you for this discussion. Any further questions? Good afternoon, I'm Sophia. I understand the importance of this draft laws and of this law. If there is no opportunity to promote 13597 and this is not possible to promote the law on xenophobia, maybe it's possible to amend the law on discrimination. Do you mean amend some existing law, or do you want to introduce something? Maybe we may amend the rights of ЛГБТІК community to the law on xenophobia. Maybe it's easier to introduce amendments to the existing laws. Draft, we speak about the draft law 13597. The draft law 13597, this is not a special law. It is a draft law on amendments to some other laws. And actually, this is the answer to your question. This is once again about sexual orientation, about gender identity, SOGI, and actually it could be passed quickly. And sometimes the other draft laws were passed very quickly, having not noticed that SOGI formulation. So 13597, these are just amendments to the existing laws. I confirm that this draft law actually introduces amendments to many laws, including the criminal code and our major anti-discrimination laws. For example, counteraction to discrimination in Ukraine. And when we amend all this core of law, it will be easier to amend all the laws dealing with discrimination, then try to amend anti-discrimination pieces of legislation one by one. That is, our members of parliament should realize this need and vote for this draft law. It looks like we can finish